In this video, we're ranking the 8 Nightlords from worst to best. Now, Elden Ring Nightreign, a co-op focused game, is obviously a different experience from the mainline single player From Software games, and thus the boss fight experience will also be viewed from a different lens. A lot of things come together to shape up how good or bad a major boss fight will be in Elden Ring Nightreign, including your Nightfarer, your team composition, how good your expedition went, and whether or not your teammates suck. And for this reason, keep in mind that this list is entirely opinion-based. I mean, all of these lists are opinion-based, but this one is even more opinion-based than the other ones, alright? This is also the reason why I don't consider making a difficulty ranking for the Nightlords. There's just way too many external factors that can affect the outcome. But we can talk about the quality of the Nightlords, so let's get started with the worst one. Number 8. Maris, Fathom of Night, aka the Ogre, aka an even worse version of the Elden Beast. Now, I do appreciate the fact that this boss is unique and distinct from all the other Nightlords. Even the arena feels entirely different, even if it's just due to a color palette change and some water effects. Maris is by far the most boring Nightlord in the entire game. It's clearly inspired by the Elden Beast, only it manages to be even more boring if you can believe that. It spends a good majority of the fight flying up, so if you only brought in melee users for this fight, fuck you I guess. Even with ranged users though, this fight isn't really all that more exciting. Whether you play melee or ranged, half of your time is probably going to be spent chasing this fish around, trying to do some damage to it until it flies away again or performs an attack. At least the Elden Beast, boring as it was actually on the goddamn ground most of the time. Seriously, who thought it was a good idea to make a boss that spends 75% of the fight being out of reach? While I said I wasn't going to make a difficulty ranking, I think many people can agree that this Nightlord is also one of the easiest, if not the easiest. Most of its attacks are fairly easy to deal with. It can sprout jellyfish that periodically chase players and explode, which again forces you on the run and thus have less opportunities to attack the boss. It summons tentacles from the ground that attack nearby players. I found that it's best to just avoid these or maybe just break the ones that are in your immediate vicinity. It has a splash attack that is somewhat tricky to dodge since you need to dodge at the correct position and into the waves, some easy to dodge melee attacks, and of course the nuke, which you can either break if you've brought in ranged users or just simply run away from its gigantic AoE. The only dangerous attack it has is the Hypnosis, which will quickly build up the sleep status and damage all players. There's no way to outrun this or be far enough from it, so players will need to focus damage on the boss to stop it. I recommend saving your ultis for this one and coordinating with your team so that you can alternate. Having relics and gear that boost sleep resistance is a good idea for this boss, and lightning is also highly effective. Because another issue this boss has is its gigantic health pool. It feels like this is the tankiest Nightlord in the entire game. Combine that with the fact that it moves around constantly, is out of melee range most of the time, and uses attacks that force you on the run, and you can understand why it gets the dishonor of being the worst and most boring Nightlord of the entire game. Number 7. Adel, Baron of Night, aka the Gaping Jaw. I have a personal issue with bosses that act erratically, have short or weird tails to their attacks or combos, and mess up the camera when they attack you. 3 checkboxes that Adel ticks easily. I do not like this boss at all. Adel is a gigantic what it seems to be your grandma's idea of how genetically modified chickens will look like in the future. It mostly attacks with its jaws, surprise surprise. Now, my major issue with this boss is the fact that this feels like one of these bosses that you can't really master all that well and just rely on brute force and its weaknesses to basically outpower and outheal it. A lot of the time I can't understand whether its combos are ongoing or if I have an opportunity to counterattack, especially during the second phase. It also doesn't help that your camera gets messed up when this dude is rushing at you, so it makes it even more difficult to keep an eye out for upcoming attacks. Seriously, what am I supposed to do in this situation other than just spam roll out? Also, the second phase transition where it summons lightning all over what feels like the entire goddamn arena, this just feels like an attack you're meant to tank, or I guess run away from. I realize that you're supposed to dodge right before it closes its jaws, but that's much easier said than done. It's effectively a trial and error thing until you figure out the correct timing. The problem with Nightreign is that trial and error isn't so easy when you have to go through a 40-minute expedition before reaching the boss. I know that all of this can be chalked up to be not understanding the boss fight well enough and being salty. And you know what? Maybe it's just that. but I feel like this is a boss where the difference between solo and co-op shines the most, and it's apparent that Nightreign is, in fact, designed for co-op play. I beat this boss both on solo and co-op, and I can tell you that in co-op this boss feels much more doable, since it will target one player who will probably be unable to attack during the boss's combos, but will give ample opportunity for the other two players to attack, especially with ranged users. I also need to talk about one more aspect of this boss fight, the frame drops. Now, Nightreign overall runs pretty smooth, although I did have to change my graphics to medium, even though my GPU should have been very easily be able to sustain the high presets, but whatever. But this boss fight is the only instance in the entire game that consistently causes frame drops, specifically with the lightning effects. It's really not that big a deal, I just want more reasons to bash on this guy. Poison is extremely effective on this boss and will even cause it to periodically stop and barf the poison out, which gives you plenty of opportunity to punish it. In fact, all status effects other than blood loss are apparently effective on this boss, so plan out your team accordingly. Anyway, let's move on. Number 6. Noster, Wisdom of Night, aka the Sentient Pest. Noster is the only duo Nightlord boss fight in the game, and it's alright. It consists of the Scorpion and the Moth, which are somewhat polar opposites of each other and complement one another's moves. The Scorpion is in your face most of the time and hits you with punishing melee attacks, which will force you to attack it most of the time if you're playing solo. The Moth will, for the most part, stay behind and shoot magic projectiles at you, as well as cause an extremely dangerous poison mist that is actually pretty tricky to dodge and get out of. Seriously, this can wreck your HP in seconds, so as soon as you see it start to form, get the hell out of there. After a certain HP threshold, the two will combine Power Ranger style in what is probably the laziest fusion I have ever seen in my entire life. The Moth is literally just sitting on top of the Scorpion. It's literally just one on top of the other. Come on, From Software. Anyway, at this point the boss will combine the two creatures' attacks, which will come in sequence as combo moves. I don't have too many things to say about this boss fight, honestly. It's not particularly hard, especially in co-op. It's not particularly interesting either, despite the gimmick of the boss. The Scorpion will occasionally enclose itself in a shell, at which point the team should focus on the Moth, if they can, until the Scorpion becomes vulnerable again. It's actually better and easier to beat this Nightlord second, or at least beat this one before beating Adel, the second one, as the relic you get by defeating this Nightlord gives your starting weapon the poison affinity, which is obviously extremely useful for Adel. So yeah, let's move on to the next one. Number 5. Gladius, Beast of Night, aka Tricephalos, aka Not a Good Boy. This is the very first Nightlord that the game presents and is the only one that you absolutely have to beat first, as you only unlock the rest of the Nightlords by beating this one first. Gladius is a fairly fun but challenging fight, though to be honest, part of the challenge might be the fact that this is the very first Nightlord which you fight, at a point in the game where you don't really know too much about how to play optimally. Gladius is a three-headed dog that attacks either by biting or swiping its body at you, using the sword on the chain stuck to its body, or occasionally spitting fire at you. It pretty much nails the Cerberus inspiration. The bite attacks are fairly easy to dodge though, similar to Adel, this boss has deceptive combo moves that seem like they're finished but they're not, luring you into attacking and then getting your head chomped off. Its spinning sword attacks are somewhat tricky to dodge too, specifically the one in which the sword spins twice in a rapid succession. Its fire breath attack is also a bit deceptive in that you need to dodge a bit faster than what you might expect. This is because the middle head actually spits out the fire just moments before the other two heads, so remember to keep your eye on the middle head when this attack is coming. But overall, I'd say this is a good example of a tough but fair boss fight. Except for one aspect, the splitting parts. When he reaches a certain threshold and then periodically after that, Gladius will split into 3 dogs. Now, I really like the concept and idea of this gimmick. It ties in really well with the core thematic of Nightreign, which is obviously 3-player co-op. However, I wasn't actually a big fan of the execution. First of all, in co-op, the dogs sometimes each target one player, yes, but oftentimes they like to gang up and overwhelm one individual member, especially if they're being targeted. And it's not really a good time being chased around by 3 erratic, fast and punishing bosses. The dogs can also, seemingly on a whim, just jump to another target and catch them off guard. In all honesty, it's actually better not to split up too far in this phase. If one member does get aggroed by the dogs, teammates will need to be close to provide assistance if necessary. I would have preferred if the AI was tweaked to make each dog more likely to target a different player. That would make this fight more enjoyable and fair in my opinion. As for solos, well, to be honest, I would have simply preferred this gimmick not to exist on solo mode at all. As I said, it's not fun being chased by 3 annoying ass bitches. If it weren't for the splitting parts of the fight, I would have probably ranked Gladius a spot higher, but for now he sits comfortably in around the middle of the road of this list. Number 4. Fulgor, Champion of Night. Glow. Okay, this is pissing me off. Why not Champion of Night, like all the other fucking Nightlords? This is annoying me more than what it should. Anyway, aka the Dark Drift Knight. Fulgor was one of the tougher Nightlords for me personally, and was also the only Nightlord that I beat on solo first, before beating him on co-op. Fulgor is a highly aggressive and punishing centaur with one arm that likes to run around a lot and attack you with his lance. His melee attacks are fairly easy to dodge, the tails are fairly obvious and you just dodge into the wind attacks to avoid them successfully. It's his magic attacks that are the problem. Fulgor will slam his lance into the ground, which will cause golden magical lances to erupt from the ground on your position, as well as causing the ground to periodically erupt with these lances, which makes this fight even more hectic, as players will need to be careful not to be caught in these eruptions. Sometimes Fulgor will bind a player when casting this attack, which will make the timing to dodge the initial attack much more strict, but still possible. His rush attack is also very dangerous. The rush itself is actually pretty easy to dodge, but it leaves behind a big mark on the ground that explodes after a few seconds. You can either run away from the mark or figure out the timing of the explosion and dodge to avoid it. At around 50% health, he will spawn a demonic arm from his armless side, which he will then use to swipe at you and perform dark explosions. The swipe attack is actually pretty tricky to dodge, as it also causes a purple substance to sprout out that you also need to take into account. Overall, this boss fight is very fast-paced, tough, but also very rewarding to beat. Keep in mind that due to Fulgor's extremely mobile nature, spellcasters can have a tough time landing hits on this guy. So if you're playing with a spellcaster, make sure that you have homing spells or very fast spells to make your life easier. Number 3. Caligo Miasma of Night, aka Fissure in the Fog. Caligo is your standard, patented, 100% authentic Elden Ring dragon boss fight. This boss is one of the few bosses that's actually more dangerous from a distance than it is from melee range, due to its breath attacks. Talking to you Iron Eye mains, by far the most dangerous aspect of this fight is the frostbite. Caligo likes to use ice breath attacks that shoot out a chilling mist. Now this mist is very tricky to avoid. You need to treat it similar to how you would a fire breath attack, in that it's safer to simply run away from its reach rather than try to dodge it with iframes. The breath will cause ice crystals to form on the ground wherever it hits, aside from causing damage directly. These crystals will cause small amounts of damage when you come in contact with them, but more importantly will quickly cause frost buildup, which will make your character receive a huge amount of damage when the bar fully fills, as well as make them receive more damage for a short period of time. Caligo can use its breath attack to hit enemies at range as well as close to its body by aiming it at the ground. The strategy here is similar to many dragon bosses. Bait some easy to dodge range attacks, then quickly run to the boss for some easy melee hits, run away from the close range breath attack and then rinse and repeat. It also has some melee attacks like claw swipes and tail swipes, and it can also use its tail to attack with a hard-hitting ranged projectile. Caligo has 2 ultimate moves, during both of which he disappears from the battlefield. The first is the Icicle Crash. Caligo will summon a massive AoE attack on the sky. Now you can use sound to determine the location of the icicles, and you can avoid them by simply getting out of range or by standing really close to Caligo itself. The second is the Wind Blast. Gusts of wind will start to form and their trajectory betrays the boss's location. Players will need to stand behind one of the pillars that form during this attack, opposite of the boss, to avoid the damage. Keep in mind that you need to be standing really close to the pillars. Overall, Caligo is one of the most majestic and grandiose fights in the game, and a good example of an epic dragon boss fight. Number 2. Libra, Creature of Night, aka the Equilibrious Beast. Look, maybe this is a weird take, I don't know, but I love this weird, ugly, cocaine-infused Bugs Bunny. This fight hits my buttons exactly when it comes to what I like in boss fights. I personally prefer fast-paced, adrenaline-pumping bosses, and this dude is just that. Libra is an extremely aggressive boss that is either constantly in your face or is barraging you with spells. It also causes frenzy buildup, so yeah, keep an eye out for that. This boss is considered by many as one of the hardest Nightlords. Now, I don't fully agree with this statement, but it is certainly a chaotic fight. Its spells, while not super hard to avoid, are fairly annoying, especially the one where it causes an explosion from beneath your feet. Again, not because it's hard to dodge, but because the boss really likes to spam this attack and catch you off guard. Its melee attacks are fairly easy to dodge. Its turret spell is also easy to dodge if you dodge to the side. Libra has two attacks that I consider quote-unquote ultimates. The first is the one where it envelops itself in a bubble and summons sigils. Players should run or shoot the sigils to break them. If you break them on time, the boss will be momentarily staggered and then will enter a sort of rage mode, where it will pounce a lot of times on one player. If you don't break them on time, the boss will buff itself. Now, I do have a complaint when it comes to this attack, specifically on solo. Later in the fight, there are way too many sigils for one player to break, meaning that it will almost always lead to the boss getting a buff, which kinda sucks. The other ultimate is simply the boss causing frenzy buildup on all players. To counter this, you just need to quickly run over to the small crystals that periodically drop during the fight, as they reduce frenzy buildup. When it teleports around, it causes a small explosion that will very easily catch players off guard. It's pretty much the same with Radagon's teleportation from Elden Ring, which was also one of my favorite bosses of that game, coincidentally. I know a lot of people hate this guy, but for me, it's a pretty cool boss and I always have fun fighting it. Number 1. Hailstorm the Nightlord, aka the Night Aspect. Humanoid, fast-paced and tough as hell, meets all of my personal criteria. Hailstorm is the final boss of Elden Ring Nightreign and is quite possibly the hardest Nightlord in the game. This fight is also the only two-part Nightlord fight in the game. In the first phase, Hailstorm will be using mostly melee attacks. His combos are very difficult to dodge, with some attacks being lightning fast, while other attacks being deliberately slow to catch players off guard. At about 50% health in the first phase, he'll pull up his second sword and start performing even tougher combos. The second phase is significantly harder than the first phase. Hailstorm will start incorporating magic attacks into his moveset, such as magic projectiles, homing mini missiles, and a rush attack. But the biggest threat of phase 2 is his AoE attacks. Hailstorm will use a variety of extremely dangerous AoE attacks such as his Reality Reaper, which will cause fissures to sprout out from the ground and explode after about a second. This will also cause fissures to periodically appear and erupt from the ground, similar to Fulgor's attacks, which make this already brutal fight even more difficult. There's no one better strategy to win against this boss, it's just a matter of learning its attacks and persevering. He is weak to holy damage, so obviously having holy damage on your weapons and or holy incantations is extremely helpful. Now, I've seen some people complain that this boss is quote-unquote too easy. I don't know what planet you're living on, my dudes, but for me this is one of the hardest bosses in the game. Now, yes, it's not Malenia or Promised Consort Radahn levels of difficulty, sure, but I think he serves the role of final boss very well. Best boss in the game for me, no questions asked. And there you have it, the 8 Nightlords ranked worst to best. As I said, a difficulty ranking is out of the question, since Elden Ring Nightreign presents way too many different factors that affect the challenge of each Nightlord. But as always, I'd like to hear from you guys. Let me know your own list down in the comments. If you like this video, then clicking like will really be appreciated, and hey, maybe even click on the video that's on screen right now if you like what you see so far. As always, thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.